Badass of the Week is an iHeartRadio podcast produced by High Five Content. October 7th, 1777. The forests of upstate New York are afire with musket flashes, gun smoke, and the screams of fighting men. Through fierce determination, Daniel Morgan's Rangers have heroically held the line against the British and have begun to drive them back in disarray. The entire war and the American Revolution depends on this moment. The opportunity to strike is now. Yet the overall commander of American forces either doesn't see it or he's too timid to try to exploit it. In that moment, with so much hanging in the balance, one American hero took it into his own hands to lead his troops to victory. Jumping on his horse, he unsheathed his saber, reared up on his steed, and charged screaming into battle, a single man streaking towards the enemy with his blade at the ready. Inspired, his men rallied behind him. Their ferocious bayonet attack that day smashed through the British lines, marking a turning point in the Revolution. Despite all of this American officer's heroics, here and in the dozens of battles that came before and after, you cannot find a single statue to this man in all of the United States. In fact, his name today is synonymous with one word: traitor. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am here with my co-host, Dr. Pat Larash. Pat, have you been watching anything good on TV recently?
Yeah, I finished Only Murders in the Building, and haven't really picked up anything since that.
Yeah, it's always so weird with so much stuff on VOD. So it's always, you don't have these cultural events as often anymore where there's just a thing that everybody has to watch, and they're watching, oh, did you see Walking Dead? It was on the other, whatever. We don't have that quite as much anymore. Are you watching House of the Dragon at all? I've been watching that.
No, not really. I haven't picked it up yet.
It's not season 1 of Game of Thrones. It's fine. I don't have any problems with it, but I also watched 3 episodes on Monday in a row, and I really can't tell you too much about any of it. And I was a pretty big-time Game of Thrones person. I was super into it. I had this big list of Game of Thrones people I was going to write about on my website.
Yeah.
But Game of Thrones, in particular, is kind of a weird cultural thing because everybody loved it and was crazy about it. And then it didn't get a lot of hate. It didn't get a lot of people weren't just angry about it forever. It just disappeared overnight. It seemed like nobody wanted to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, everyone moved on to the next thing.
Did you watch Game of Thrones at all?
I watched a few. I watched some of the seasons and I kind of fell off and didn't pick it up again. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened with that show was that it was amazing and it was so good. There was nothing like it. It was really, really, and I had read all the books and stuff, but people were so into this every week. Oh, did you watch the show? Did you watch it? What's going on? All this crazy stuff is happening. And then basically the book got basically the last season, the show got beyond the books, and then it was on the writers of the show to keep it going. And the last 2 seasons, but in particular, the last season were so bad, and it ended so horribly and so miserably that everybody was just oh, well, forget this, right?
Yeah.
Never, it ended so poorly that you don't want to go back and rewatch season 1 with for nostalgia purposes. It's just, nope, that was awful.
Yeah.
That was a huge 8-year waste of my time.
No. So it's not like it's a Godfather 3 kind of situation where it's excellent, and then meh, or it's just it was so meh that it kind of ruined the whole thing?
No, it was not so mad that it totally ruined the whole thing. It was, we have these characters and we've established them and they're clearly arcing towards these varying different endpoints. And then actually, I was a bad guy the whole time. And actually, this is you thought I liked you, but I don't like you actually. And it's what? Wait. So,
yeah.
Wait, all of this stuff was coming out of left field. It was just brutal. It was a miserable experience watching the last season of Game of Thrones, and that sucked because I really loved the show and I liked the books, and
it really was part of the culture.
Yeah,
for so long. Yeah,
and it's just gone.
Yeah.
So I bring this up, right? And like Game of Thrones in particular was huge thing. People would go to bars and watch it and like react to it, whatever. And then overnight it disappears. Nobody's talking about it anymore. And nobody's going back to rewatch the old stuff. Even when House of the Dragon came out, they put like Game of Thrones in very small font at the top because they kind of want to dissociate themselves with the entire thing. And we actually have a story like that in American history. And
does it have dragons, Ben?
It does not have dragons. No.
Oh, no.
It really happened. They ride on horses. They fight with swords. It's a true story.
Okay.
Whereas
I'll settle for a
Game of Thrones
true
is only
story.
kind of based on the historical events. So, Pat, what do you think when I say the name Benedict Arnold?
Ew, ick. He's that traitor guy from the American Revolution. Ew.
Yeah, you're not wrong. He is that traitor guy from the American Revolution. But I'm going to talk about him this week on the Badass of the Week podcast because he was also kind of badass.
So, ew, ick, Benedict Arnold, the traitor, was a badass. That's what you're going for, Ben.
That is the thesis statement that I am presenting right now, and I will just ask you to hold all judgment until the end.
Okay, I will hear you out. Present your evidence. Present your reasoning.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
I'm going to talk to you about Benedict Arnold. Okay, let's get back into it. So, Benedict Arnold, he's a guy whose name is synonymous with treason and being a traitor and being hatefully remembered by anybody who has any rudimentary knowledge of American history. But right before he became the biggest traitor in American history, and the first big one, I guess, he was actually pretty badass. So let's get into talking about Benedict Arnold. So for Benedict Arnold, the war begins for him. He is a pretty wealthy Connecticut shopkeeper. He's living in the colonies under British rule, early 1770s. He's doing well with his business. Things are going pretty good. But as the revolution is starting to brew, he definitely errs on the side of the patriots. He is not a loyalist. He does not like the crown. He doesn't like paying his taxes, like many wealthy shopkeepers don't. And he decides he is all in on this revolution, like let's start our own country, let's not tax the rich, all of that good stuff. And when he hears about the American army putting up a good fight at the Battle of Bunker Hill, he gets so excited that he runs to the local armory, demands the keys from the guys there, gets a bunch of guns out of the armory, and just like recruits a militia, which is just if you study American Revolution history, that is just a thing that people knew how to do in these days. You just put out a call for a militia and a militia arrives.
Yeah, that's a motif that just keeps coming up over and over again.
Yes. We're going to see a lot of people who randomly were able to summon armies out of nowhere. And Benedict Arnold is one of them. He gets this militia. He heads out for upstate New York, which is kind of the line, like the border between Canada and New York State. And he links up with another guy who raised his own militia, a guy named Ethan Allen, who is now remembered as a great hero for his victory at Fort Ticonderoga. And a lot of people forget that Benedict Arnold was also there. So these two guys get together. They storm Fort Ticonderoga on May 10th, 1775. And it's just a bunch of screaming Americans with rifles running up the hill, which is incredibly terrifying to the British and the Canadians and many other people in the world. And the British commander runs outside in his underwear and immediately surrenders the keys to the fort. Benedict Arnold and Ethan Allen are great heroes of the American Revolution very early on in the proceedings for their capture of a dude in his underwear at a fort on the border between New York and Canada. Another thing that Arnold is very well known for, and one of the craziest things that he did during his career, is he led the first American invasion of Canada. We've tried to invade Canada twice. We have failed both times. Benedict Arnold was in command of the first attempt. He led 1,000 soldiers on a 350-mile canoe ride and hike through the uncharted wildernesses of Canada in the middle of winter. And when I mean uncharted, I mean like the only notes we had on this, on the route that they were taking, was literally not on any maps because nobody had gone. It was all swamp and river and all this stuff. Nobody had gone through any of it before. And the only guide they had along this way was some dude who, like, more than 10 years ago had traveled this route and made a little journal about it and drew little maps and stuff. Very sketchy, but Arnold was like, yeah, whatever, we can do this. I'll march 1,000 guys this way in the middle of winter in canoes that we just made like 2 weeks ago. That sounds feasible.
Totally. Ha!
So they march through the wilderness. It doesn't go well. Like, people are starting to desert. People are starting to get hungry. It's cold. People are freezing. The food's starting to run out. There's stories of people eating the leather off of their shoelaces just to get any kind of calories to sustain themselves on this hike. They go all the way up the Kennebec River, waterfalls, rapids. Sometimes they're rowing. Sometimes they're portaging across, carrying the boats and stuff. But they do eventually make it. It takes nearly 2 months for them to get through this passageway. And the idea was that when they get out the other side, they're going to attack Canada from the direction that they were least expecting it, right? The main roads were all fortified. They wanted to go the back way. And they did. And they were incredibly successful. A lot due to the leadership of Benedict Arnold. He spent a bunch of his own money to outfit and supply the soldiers. And they did it. They entered Canada, American Army, 1,000 guys outside the wall of the Canadian capital, Quebec City, which has 40-foot tall walls and several hundred people defending the town. It's the only city in North America that still has its original fortifications and walls. And they're very impressive and they're very big. And Benedict Arnold, he's got no cannons. He has enough powder left from his journey that every guy can get 5 shots.
Only 5?
Right. They get 5 shots, no cannons. Of the 1,600 guys are left. The rest have either deserted or died along the way. What do you think the first thing he did was when he gets outside the capital of Quebec? If you had to guess.
I would say a bad word.
I'd be like, sorry, guys, thanks for following me out here, but I really wasn't prepared for this. No, he demands the unconditional surrender of the castle, effective immediately.
Whoa.
Yeah, they respond by shooting a cannon at his messenger. The guy lived, but it wasn't that fun. So Benedict Arnold with 600 guys, he lays siege to Quebec City, of course, as you do. Even though he has no food, he's going to lay siege to Quebec City.
So no food, no cannon, and almost no powder.
Right.
Okay.
And yeah, he lays siege to the 40-foot walls of Quebec City. They have 6 bastions. They have 200 cannons. They have nearly 1,000 defenders, including like every man, woman, and child in Quebec City. Like, the Canadians really don't want to be part of America, and they never have, and they probably never will. Every man, woman, and child in the city was building fortifications inside the city, like roadblocks and things like that, digging trenches to try to like fortify the city against Benedict Arnold. But he's going to push forward. He gets reinforced. He gets a little bit more supplies. And on New Year's Eve, 1775, in the dead of winter, in the dead of night, in a whiteout blizzard, he personally leads the attack against Quebec City. You can say a lot of stuff about Benedict Arnold, and we're going to say a lot of bad stuff about Benedict Arnold, but he was very brave. One of his men once wrote that he was the kind of guy who would say, "Follow me," rather than "Go get him." And he personally leads the attack. He is dragging a sled that he has mounted with a little cannon on it.
Wait a minute. So they actually do have a cannon. They have one little cannon.
They found one. Yeah, they managed over the 2 months, I believe, that they were besieging Quebec City. They managed to get their hands on, and not a big one, a little cannon that fits on a sled, right? But they did it. And they break into the lower city, not the walls yet, but they're fighting through the lower parts of the city. Citizens are throwing things at them from the windows. The town guard is fighting them, but they are pushing their way through. And they're winning, and they're doing pretty well. And then Benedict Arnold gets shot in the leg. He's falling, he's down, he's screaming and yelling, he's trying to crawl his way to like keep fighting. 3 of his own guys drag him, kicking and screaming off the battlefield. The attack kind of stalls, and then it gets crushed. I think something like 500 Americans get captured. The attack is completely destroyed. Arnold is lucky to escape with just like a little group of his own guys. They get away, but complete defeat, right? After all of that work, all of that travel, all the way up there, they besiege him for a couple months. They have this huge attack, very daring, but it's a big failure. And they're running away.
Yeah, tactical withdrawal.
Tactical withdrawal, yeah, that's the military term.
That's the military term. Need to remember that. Yeah, okay, so I'm guessing this is not the end of the story.
It is not the end of the story, because Benedict Arnold now has a new problem, which is that the Canadian Army has defeated the American Army in the north, and now they are going to march south and attack into New York and just pursue the defeated army and try to rout them. And then basically like, okay, well, we defeated you and now we're going to go in because all you guys are dead and we're going to go march in there and take New York. So Arnold's retreating, and he learns that the British are set to attack, and they're not going to go the way he went. They're not going to go the main road. They are going to go by water. You've got all those lakes up in upstate New York and Canada. They're going to go across a big lake called Lake Champlain. They have 29 warships that they've built on this lake, and they're going to transport 13,000 men across Lake Champlain into upstate New York to launch an attack. Arnold has like 400 guys with him. He's in big trouble. But he puts out a call. Like I said, everybody's raising militias. So he raises a militia of just everybody he can get his hands on the way back, right? Upstate New York people like, hey, we got some trouble here. We got a problem. He has what's left of his soldiers chop down trees. They melt horseshoes and gun barrels and whatever bits of cannons left they have. They make nails out of it.
Wait, so they're actually melting down their firearms?
Melting down their guns. Yeah, melting down their firearms.
Like they're choosing to sacrifice their guns for this?
Right, to build ships.
Yeah.
They're going to cut down trees and melt down their gear to make nails to build ships, which, I mean, the main thing they're going to do with them is set them on fire and sail them into the British fleet to try to cause some havoc there. But he and his men managed to build 16 warships in Lake Champlain in an incredibly short period of time. So he gets defeated on New Year's Eve, 1775. On October 10, 1776, so 10 months later, he's built 16 warships. And he trained a regiment of New Hampshire infantrymen who had never been on a boat before how to sail a ship. And those guys are going to go out and sail against 29 warships of the British Navy and 13,000 men and try to stop this attack into New York.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's impressive. The odds are not great.
No.
And like I said, their plan was to light some of those ships on fire and just sail them into the British Navy to try to hope to catch some of their ships on fire. But they end up fighting this Battle of Lake Champlain. It's 7 hours on the lake, which I just love the idea of two navies fighting each other in a big lake. Whoever wins, there's no exit plan here, right? All you can do is sail back and forth around this lake. There's no ocean access, which I just always find kind of funny.
Yeah.
Everything catches on fire. The boats all get smashed. Everything gets blown up. Benedict Arnold loses every single ship in his fleet. And like I said, he was planning on setting most of them on fire, which is what he does. He uses the sails to carry his wounded men home in these bloody sails. But he was able to delay the British attack. He did enough damage to them. He didn't win the battle. He lost every ship in his fleet, but he did enough damage to them that they couldn't press the invasion, and they were kind of stuck there. Arnold retreats back to Fort Ticonderoga, which is the fort he captured in like the very beginning days of the war, starts building more ships, starts getting reinforcements, starts building up his army. And it's going to be another 6 or 7 months before the British are able to try to attack again. Bought himself some time. And that's pretty awesome to have like been defeated. And then you cover your own tactical withdrawal by building these ships and having them fight against this invasion force.
Yeah, that was a pretty badass tactic.
Okay. The British do eventually come, and this is where you get the Battle of Saratoga, which is the one that everybody knows. It's the turning point of the war. That's the only thing I've ever remembered learning about this growing up, was that Battle of Saratoga is the turning point of the American Revolution. The Battle of Saratoga was won by Benedict Arnold, and we're going to get into that. So the British come down, and the British take their sweet time getting down there. The British army is led by a guy named Johnny Burgoyne, and they call him Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne. Johnny Burgoyne is like, you know that question of like, which historical figure would you have dinner with if you could have dinner with any historical figure? What would your answer to that be, Pat?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. Honestly, maybe the Roman poet Ovid. I don't know. It's like, I think actually I'd want to have like a whole dinner party of people. But anyway, is this the cue for me to ask you, Ben? So, Ben, who would you like to have dinner with?
Well, I think a lot of people go with the historical figure they think is the most interesting. Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne might have been the most fun person to have dinner with. If you were going to have a dinner party, have dinner with somebody from history, it'd be a close one between like Peter the Great and Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne, because they were both party monsters. So the British are going down. Johnny Burgoyne was just some guy. He was just some British officer. He meets the commander of the British Army at a party in Canada and is like, hey, you want to take care of these Americans? I'll take care of these Americans for you, dude. I got this under control. And the guy was like, yeah, sure. So why not? You can have an army of guys to attack the colonies. So Burgoyne is going down. He's got this big baggage train with him. He's got one giant horse-drawn carriage that's filled entirely with silverware for his parties. He's a party machine, and that's all he really wants to do. And that's all he does on the ride south from Canada into New York to fight the Americans. And the bummer with this is that it also really slows him down because you got to get all these carts through the mud and the rain and the muck and all of this stuff. They're not an easy way to get down there. And by the time they get down there, the Americans have reinforced their base at Saratoga. So there's two guys in charge of the base at Saratoga. One's Benedict Arnold and one is Horatio Gates. Gates is the guy who gets all the credit for winning this, even though Horatio Gates would have lost it without Benedict Arnold. Gates' strategy was like, hey, we're in this fort. We got these cannons. We got these trenches. Let's just hang out here and defend. And Arnold was like, no, they've got more guys than us. They got 6,000 troops. They've got hundreds of cannons, and they're bringing up more and more every single day. Every day we wait here, more of Johnny Burgoyne's silverware is going to arrive, and with it's going to be cannons and horses and guys. And so we have to attack. We have to find the right moment and attack. And him and Gates really have an argument about this. There's one, they do like a little skirmish at one point, a place called Fraser's Farm, or a place that's now known as Fraser's Farm. The Americans win. Arnold is like, this is it. We got to go. We got to break him. We've got him on the run. Gates says no. They have this huge argument. And Benedict Arnold, it's a very it's one of these you can't fire me, I quit situations. He might have been fired, he might have quit. We don't really know. There was a big argument, there was a lot of swearing, there was a lot of anger, and it ended up with Arnold having stayed at Saratoga because he really wanted to see this thing through, but he was completely removed of all command and was no longer in charge of any soldiers. So, a few weeks later, the British launched an even bigger attack, and the Americans hold again. Same place, Fraser's Farm. It's called that because the British commander's name was Fraser. He gets killed on the battlefield at the second engagement here. The British are kind of on the run, and the British main force isn't really prepared for this. There's this huge hole in their lines. Arnold is sitting on the hill at Saratoga watching this, tells Gates, this is the time. Gates is like, no, we're just going to hang out here. Arnold's like, you can hang out here, I'm going. He goes on his horse by himself, rides directly to that gap. By himself, he jumps over a fence on his horse. He's waving his sword around, he's screaming. The American troops that are there are so inspired by this that they follow him, even though he's not their commanding officer. He commands nobody. Their orders are to hold, and they charge with him, and they run through, and they break through this flank. Arnold gets shot in the leg. He keeps fighting. His horse gets shot, falls on the same leg that has now been shot twice, crushes his leg. He's pinned under the horse. He's still waving his sword around, trying to get people to rally. And they do. They defeat Scottish Highlanders. They defeat some of the more intense units of the British Army, drive them from the field, and the next day, Johnny Burgoyne surrenders his entire army to the Americans, 6,000 soldiers.
Wow.
So he's the greatest hero of the biggest battle of the American Revolution.
Yeah. Mr. Benedict Follow Me Arnold.
Yeah, follow me. Exactly. That's how he did it.
And that's how we're seeing him in this moment.
Yes.
This is Benedict Arnold at his best.
This is Benedict Arnold at his best. It's all downhill from here.
Oh.
Yes, this is the bummer part of the story. So he gets put in charge of Philadelphia. He's regrouping, right? His leg's all messed up. He technically disobeyed orders. Him and Gates still hate each other. Gates is a little bit more influential. Arnold was a little bit more of a renegade. While he's recovering, they put him in Philadelphia. He marries into a loyalist family, which, take from that what you will. There's a lot of historical stuff around, his wife made him do it, which I don't really think is a very productive way of looking at historical figures. Because he still had to make the decision, right? I don't understand.
Exactly.
It's he had an evil wife, and that's why she henpecked him into doing evil stuff, which I hate it as a historical way of looking at things.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, she's not the only influence on him. And, we have just so many examples of married couples disagreeing on things. I'm with you on this, Ben.
Exactly. It's he's marrying into the loyalist family now after having been fighting the British from day one of this war. It's not like he didn't give that at least a little bit of thought before he bought the ring, right? He gets passed over for promotion. The Continental Congress accuses him of stealing funds because they don't like him. He wasn't stealing funds. By most accounts, he wasn't stealing funds. He came into money when he married this family, so he started buying nicer things. They accused him of stealing money from the Continental Congress. I think that was just kind of a way of giving him a hard time.
Yeah.
His leg hurt every single day because we're looking at like 18th century medicine to repair a dude who got shot twice in the same leg and then had a horse fall on it.
Oof. Yeah. Even with 21st century medicine, that's rough.
Yes. So he's still brigadier general, which is not that high, right? It's like the lowest level of general. He's a brigadier general, and he's one of the greatest war heroes of the war so far. Gates gets promoted over him and is given command of the entire army in the South, completely blows it, and gets massively defeated. And Arnold is super mad. He's like, well, I should be having a better post than just this Philadelphia thing. And so they put him in charge of a little base called West Point, which is currently where the United States Military Academy is, where the Army trains its officers. But at the time, it was just a fort on a river in upstate New York. And he was just like, what is this? What the hell is this? Right? Like,
yeah, he was promoted out of the way.
Right. You were just kind of stuck out here in the middle of nowhere. He's mad. Like, I'd be a little annoyed with this too. So what he does is not awesome. He meets with some British spies and is like, you know what, I'll just hand over West Point to you guys if you just make me an officer in the British Army and treat me better than these Americans. He wants money. He wants an officer's commission, and he is going to turn over West Point.
Oh, Benedict.
That's not a good idea. This is the American Revolution version of like having too much wine and like emailing your ex-girlfriend, right? Like, this is not good. This is not a well thought out decision.
Oh, no, it is not well thought out. I mean, I'd say it's on like a larger scale than, drunk texting your ex or whatever, but yeah, not Benedict Arnold's finest moment.
And he's not even good at it because he gets caught.
Yeah. Oh, he sucks at treason.
It's not his thing. He's more about, he went about treason the same way he went about the Battle of Saratoga, just like waving his sword around and yelling. Because he gets busted. Washington spies, the culper ring, they find him. And luckily for him, I guess, he figures it out before he gets caught. He escapes. They go to get him, and he gets away. He does become an officer in the British Army. They give him a generalship. He goes back and he sets fire to some stores outside of Richmond, Virginia. He goes back to his hometown of New London, Connecticut, and burns it to the ground, which, you know what? This is not cool in 1775 when you're like the greatest war hero in American history.
Not cool, Benedict. Not cool.
And that's it. He survives the war. He goes back to England. He starts up a business there. He's retires with an officer's commission, and he dies in peace. Nobody gets him. If you were going to do a Hollywood movie of his life, you'd end up having like Lafayette duel him at the end and defeat him or something, or George Washington would throw him off a tower or whatever. But like, that doesn't happen. He goes home and he retires, and he's rich, and he lives in a mansion, and he's a little bit sad about the way that things went, but he's sad and rich. Sad and rich. It's better to be sad and rich than sad and poor. Yeah.
Yeah, he's sad and rich and not in jail, right?
Yes. Right. Yeah. He committed treason and got away with it and lived happily ever after. And that's how the story ends.
Wow.
There are currently 3 monuments to Benedict Arnold in the United States, which is kind of interesting considering that he's the biggest traitor in American history.
Well, you got to remember things somehow.
Yeah. I mean, he was a great hero, right? And he wouldn't have been such a big traitor. Like, there were plenty of people who were flipping sides in the American Revolution on the lower levels, but you don't remember their names because they weren't big-time celebrities in their own lifetime, right?
Yeah, so these monuments, how do you commemorate a guy who's as complicated as Benedict Arnold? Big war hero, also a traitor. Yes.
Mostly you just leave his name off the monument, which is what they did to Arnold with these ones. 2 of the monuments at Saratoga. One is just the statue of a boot on the foot that got shot. And it's placed right at the spot where he led the charge and got shot in the leg. And it simply says, "In memory of the most brilliant officer of the Continental Army, who was desperately wounded on this spot, winning for his countrymen the decisive battle of the American Revolution, and for himself the rank of Major General. pretty good. That's a pretty good one. That's as far as monuments go. That's a pretty solid one. There's another statue on the battlefield at Saratoga that shows the American commanders, Horatio Gaze, Philip Schuyler, and Daniel Morgan. And there's a fourth pedestal there that's empty. Just kind of say, like, there was another guy here, but we're not going to talk about him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Conspicuous by his absence.
Yes, exactly. I like the boot one. There's a story that when Benedict Arnold was leading those raids into Virginia, he captured some American soldiers and he was interrogating them personally. And this is back before, Instagram and live streaming and all that stuff. So like people knew who Benedict Arnold, these American soldiers knew who Benedict Arnold was, but they didn't really know what he looked like, right? Because there wasn't like, you weren't sending like photographs around. There was no AP wire of like what his face looked like. So he captures these guys and he asks them if there were any orders regarding what to do with General Benedict Arnold if they were to capture him. And the soldier that he talked to, I mean, this is a story, right? But the soldier said, yes, we are to bury the wounded leg with the highest military honors and hang the rest of him.
Ooh.
Pretty solid. It's pretty good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say there's like some way, like, I would say that it's pretty badass to be remembered in this way. I mean, it's not good, right? It's not good to betray your country for some money. I think if he had just kind of been chill, he'd be remembered as like one of the greatest like founding fathers and American war heroes ever. If he had just like gone to West Point and like written an angry letter.
Yeah. Yep. Use your words, people. Well,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Use your words and then don't sell out. If he had made different choices, he'd be remembered quite differently. He wouldn't be outshone by Horatio Gates.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because of this treason, everybody does know his name, even though I don't think they quite like. I think over the last couple hundred years, it's been kind of lost as to why his name was so hated at the time, right? It was because he was such a badass war hero of American history that when he betrayed his post, it was shocking to everybody.
Yeah.
I didn't talk about the third monument, but the third one's at the United States Military Academy at West Point, which is like they have a statue to this guy at the place where he was most famously going to like betray the country.
Yeah.
But on the grounds at West Point, they have a bunch of plaques that depict every American general of the Revolution. And it just puts like birth year, rank, death, a little sentence or two about them, the name. And there's one amid all of these with all the biological details of everybody who achieved the rank of general in the American Revolution. There's one that is just blank and it says Major General, born 1740, with no additional details. So that was the story of Benedict Arnold, American hero who became American villain overnight. Pat, does it convince you at all? Is it still you, Benedict Arnold?
Okay, yes, I'll confess I still have you, Benedict Arnold, but this is ew, Benedict Arnold, say it ain't so. You have convinced me that he was a badass. And he did a total heel turn, but he was a badass. He
was, and yeah, he totally, heel turn is the best way to put it. Just overnight, greatest war hero in American history. If he decides that he doesn't want to, betray everything that he fought for, then he's probably on money right now.
Yep.
But he did, and he had his season 8 of Game of Thrones, and now nobody wants to talk about him anymore. And there's no statues of him, and that's the story of Benedict Arnold. It's much more of a tragedy than a lot of people really give it credit for, because they just think, oh, he's that guy that betrayed the country, and it's a little more deeper and interesting.
And it's not even that there are no statues. It's that there are things whose point is to tell you this is not a statue of Benedict Arnold.
Yes, they went through great effort to obfuscate and to say this is a statue of a great hero. But who shall not be named, and we will never talk about, and we don't have any his persona non grata, or he's damnatio memoriae in the U.S., I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good old damnatio memoriae, good old Roman tradition.
Oh, yes.
So, yep, you have convinced me. He's a badass, and like any human being, he's a complex character. And you can be a badass.
Yeah. So I'm not comfortable referring to him as friend of the show Benedict Arnold just yet, but
no.
But he, he's more badass than people like to give him credit for. So hopefully we won't get too many horrifying hate mail emails about this or angry Twitter comments. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that.
That is a hobby of some people.
Okay. Well, we will see you on the next one. If you made it this far, we're really glad that you did. And thanks for listening. Have a great one.
Badass of the Week is an iHeartRadio podcast produced by High Five Content. Executive producers are Andrew Jacobs, me, Pat Larash, and my co-host, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and Ben. Story editing is by Ian Jacobs, Brandon Phibbs, and Allie Lamer. Mixing and music and sound design is by Jude Brewer. Consulting by Michael May. Special thanks to Noel Brown at iHeart. Badass of the Week is based on the website badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions, ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like the podcast, subscribe, follow, listen, and tell your friends and your enemies if you want, as we'll be back next week with another one. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.